I'm Trace McCarthy, 32, and I've spent the last decade building a successful event planning business while my family treated me like their perpetual disappointment. When my cousin's wedding invitation arrived with a note suggesting I might be more comfortable at the kids' table since you're still flying solo, I felt that familiar sting of being dismissed as incomplete. But what they didn't know was that my plus one would be someone they'd only seen on magazine covers and red carpets, someone who owed me a favor from a charity gala I'd organized 3 years ago. As I watched their faces transform from condescending smirks to slack-jawed disbelief, I realized this moment would reveal far more than just my family's shallow priorities. Sometimes the most powerful statement isn't what you say, but who you choose to stand beside you. The family photo from last Christmas sits on my desk, a daily reminder of how I've always been positioned in their world. There I am, literally pushed to the edge of the frame, half my face cut off because someone needed to fit Cousin Derek's new girlfriend into the shot. Mom had orchestrated the whole thing, arranging everyone by imports married couples in the center, kids scattered around their feet, and me squeezed between the Christmas tree and the wall like an afterthought. Growing up as the middle child in the McCarthy household meant learning early that I was the square peg in a family of round holes. While my older sister Emma excelled at ballet and beauty pageants, and my younger brother Jake dominated every sport he touched, I was the one with her nose buried in books, sketching party layouts on napkins, and organizing elaborate birthday celebrations for our dog. "When are you going to find a nice man and settle down?" became my mother's greeting instead of "hello" somewhere around my 25th birthday. Every family gathering featured the same interrogation. Why wasn't I married? When would I give them grandchildren? Didn't I want to be happy like Emma and Jake? Emma had married her high school sweetheart at 22, producing 2 perfect grandchildren before her 30th birthday. Jake met his wife in college, and their wedding was the social event of the year, at least according to my mother's detailed accounts to anyone who would listen. Their success stories were told and retold at every opportunity, while my achievements were met with polite nods and swift subject changes. Last Thanksgiving, when I mentioned landing a contract to plan a Fortune 500 company's annual gala, Dad's response was, "That's nice, honey." Jake just got promoted to regional manager. When I bought my downtown loft with the profits from my business, Mom's comment was, "It's awfully big for just one person. You'll rattle around in there all alone." The constant message was clear. Professional success meant nothing without a husband and children to complete the picture. I was successful, sure, but I was also incomplete, broken. A cautionary tale they whispered about when they thought I couldn't hear poor Trace. So focused on work that she forgot to build a real life. The worst part wasn't their disappointment, it was how I'd started to internalize it. Some nights, alone in my 2-big loft, I'd wonder if they were right. Maybe I focused too much on building something that mattered to me and not enough on building something that mattered to them. The leather-bound testimonial book in my office tells a different story than the one my family believes. Page after page of handwritten notes from clients whose most important days I've orchestrated flawlessly. CEOs thanking me for corporate events that landed them million-dollar deals. Brides whose dream weddings exceeded even their wildest expectations. Philanthropists whose charity galas raised record-breaking amounts for causes close to their hearts. McCarthy events didn't happen overnight. I'd started small, planning birthday parties for neighbors' kids when I was 16, charging $25 to transform basements into princess castles or pirate ships. By college, I was coordinating sorority formals and fraternity fundraisers. After graduation, while Emma was registering for China patterns and Jake was climbing corporate ladders, I was building something from nothing. My first real break came when I planned a retirement party for my landlord's wife. She knew someone who knew someone, and suddenly I was coordinating a tech startup's product launch. The event was such a success that 3 attendees hired me on the spot. Within 2 years, I had a waiting list. Now, 7 years later, McCarthy Events handles everything from intimate anniversary dinners to galas for 500 guests. My client roster reads like a who's who of the city's elite successful entrepreneurs. Celebrities, politicians, and old money families who've been throwing elaborate parties for generations. Last month alone, I coordinated a senator's daughter's engagement party, a tech mogul's charity auction, and a Hollywood producer's birthday celebration. The numbers speak for themselves. My business generated over $2 million in revenue last year, and I took home more than my father made in his best year as a bank manager. I employ 12 people full-time and contract with dozens of vendors who depend on my business for their livelihoods. I've been featured in 3 magazines, quoted in the business section of the newspaper, and invited to speak at entrepreneurship conferences. Yet when I brought up expanding into destination weddings at Easter dinner, my mother's response was, "That's nice, dear. Did you know Emma's pregnant again?" The charity gala 3 years ago changed everything, but my family still doesn't understand its significance. It was for childhood cancer research, a cause close to my heart after my college roommate lost her little brother to leukemia. The event raised over $500,000 in one night. But more importantly, it introduced me to someone who would become both a client and, unexpectedly, a friend. I keep the signed photo from that night in my office safe, not because of its monetary value, but because of what it represents. Recognition, respect, genuine gratitude from someone who understood the complexity of what I do, someone who saw past the surface to appreciate the intricate web of logistics, creativity, and diplomacy that makes events memorable. That photo, with its personal message of thanks, represents something my family has never given me acknowledgement. That my work matters, that my success is real, and that I've built something valuable with my own hands. The charity gala for St. Jude's Research Hospital was supposed to be my masterpiece, a seamless blend of elegance and emotion that would raise unprecedented funds for childhood cancer research. Everything was perfect until 30 minutes before the doors opened, when I received a frantic call from my contact at the celebrity management agency. "Trace, we have a problem. The paparazzi somehow got wind of Marcus Rivera's recent breakup, and they're camping outside the venue. He's refusing to get out of his car." Marcus Rivera, Grammy-winning singer, philanthropist, and the evening's headline entertainment was having a panic attack in his limo while 300 guests waited inside. The breakup had been particularly nasty, splashed across tabloids for weeks, and his ex-girlfriend had been feeding stories to the press about his alleged commitment issues. I found him in the parking garage, head in his hands, looking nothing like the confident performer his fans knew. He was just a man who'd been publicly humiliated and was terrified of facing more cameras and questions. "I can't do this tonight," he said when I tapped on his window. "They're going to ask about Sarah, and I won't give them more ammunition." Instead of panicking about my ruined event, I saw a human being in pain. I sent a security team to create a distraction at the front entrance while I guided him through the kitchen, past my catering staff who had sworn to silence, and into a private room where he could collect himself. "Here's what we're going to do," I told him, offering him a bottle of water in a quiet space. "You're going to perform because there are sick children counting on the money we raised tonight, but you're performing for them, not for the cameras. I've already had the media restricted to the cocktail reception. During your set, it's just you, the audience, and the music." I spent 20 minutes talking him through the evening's timeline, explaining how I positioned him to avoid the press while still fulfilling his commitment to the charity. When he finally took the stage, his performance was raw and emotional, his best in years. According to the reviews, after the last guest left and we counted a record-breaking $680,000 in donations, Marcus found me in the empty ballroom, exhausted but satisfied. "You saved my life tonight," he said, and I could tell he meant it. "Most people would have thrown me under the bus to save their event. You protected me instead." That's when he handed me his personal phone number, not his publicist's, not his manager's, but his actual cell phone. "If you ever need anything, and I mean anything, you call me. I owe you." Over the next 3 years, we developed an unlikely friendship. He'd text me photos from his tours, ask for advice about dealing with industry pressures, and even hired me to plan his mother's 60th birthday party. He was nothing like his public persona, thoughtful, generous, and fiercely loyal to the people who'd shown him genuine kindness. When he started dating again, he asked my advice about venues for low-key dates. When he bought his first house, I helped him plan the housewarming party. When he won his second Grammy, I was one of the first people he called. The media painted him as a playboy, But I knew the truth. He was a man who'd been burned by people who wanted to use his fame for their own gain. Our friendship was built on mutual respect and the understanding that some things matter more than headlines. Staring at Marcus's contact information in my phone, I hesitated for the 10th time that morning. The wedding invitation sat on my coffee table like evidence of my family's true feelings about me. The handwritten note from my cousin still stung. Trace, I've seated you at the kids' table since you're still flying solo. Hope you don't mind the children could use a responsible adult to supervise them during dinner. A responsible adult. That's what I'd been reduced to, the spinster aunt who could watch the children while the real adults enjoyed their evening. I pressed his number before I could lose my nerve again. Trace, perfect timing. I was just thinking about you. Marcus's voice was warm, genuinely happy to hear from me. I'm in Nashville working on the new album, and I keep wondering if you'd be interested in planning the release party. I want something intimate but memorable, your specialty. Actually, I'm calling because I need that favor you mentioned, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Remember when you said if I ever needed anything? The line went quiet for a moment. Of course, what's going on? I told him about the wedding invitation, about the kids' table, about years of being dismissed and diminished by my own family. As I talked, I could feel the familiar burn of embarrassment in my chest, not just at their treatment of me, but at having to ask for help. Are you kidding me? Marcus's voice had shifted from concern to angry. They put you at the kids' table? You, the woman who pulled off the most elegant charity gala I've ever attended, who built a business from nothing, who treats everyone with dignity and respect. They think you belong with children because you're not married. I know it sounds petty. It sounds like emotional abuse disguised as family concern, he interrupted. When's the wedding? Saturday. But Marcus, I don't want to impose. I know you're busy, and I know how much you value your privacy. Stop right there. First, you're not imposing. You're collecting on a debt I've been eager to pay for 3 years. Second, I'm not busy Saturday. I was just going to be riding in my hotel room anyway. Third, this isn't about privacy. This is about loyalty, and you've never once betrayed mine. I felt tears prick my eyes at his immediate, unquestioning support. They're going to go crazy when they see you. My cousin will probably have a complete meltdown that I'm stealing attention from her wedding day. Good. Maybe they'll learn something about respecting the people they claim to love. His voice softened. Trace, you don't need me to validate your worth. You know who you are and what you've accomplished. But if having me there helps you feel stronger while you set some boundaries with your family, then I'm honored to stand beside you. We spent the next hour planning the logistics. Marcus would fly in Saturday morning, meet me at my apartment, and we'd arrive at the wedding together. He'd stay for the ceremony and reception, playing the role of my date while being genuinely himself, charming, respectful, and completely focused on supporting me. One more thing, he said as we prepared to hang up. I want you to promise me something. Don't let them make you feel guilty about this. You're not showing off or being petty. You're showing them that you have value, that you have people who see your worth, and that you won't accept being treated as less than you are. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment, feeling something I hadn't experienced in years when it came to family gatherings, anticipation instead of dread. For the first time, I wouldn't be walking into that room alone, braced for their subtle insults and disappointed looks. I'd be walking in with someone who genuinely respected me. Someone who chose to be there not out of obligation, but out of friendship. The receipt from Nordstrom's personal shopping service sat on my kitchen counter like a declaration of $1,200 for a custom-tailored navy blue suit that made me look like the successful businesswoman I actually was, rather than the paid spinster my family saw. I never spent that much on a single outfit, but something about this weekend demanded armor, and good armor didn't come cheap. Standing in my walk-in closet, I held up the suit jacket and remembered the personal shopper's words. Confidence is the best accessory, but a perfectly fitted suit doesn't hurt either. The fabric felt like silk between my fingers, and when I tried it on at the store, I'd seen a different version of myself in the mirror, not the woman who shrank under her family's disapproval. but the one who commanded rooms full of high-profile clients. My assistant, Rachel, had been invaluable during the preparations. When I told her about the wedding plan, she'd immediately understood the stakes. "It's about time," she'd said, not even looking up from her computer. "I've been watching you minimize yourself for 3 years every time your family calls. They have no idea who they're dealing with." Rachel had worked for me since the beginning, back when McCarthy events was just me and a folding table in my studio apartment. She'd seen me negotiate with Britazillas, handle celebrity tantrums, and coordinate events that would make most people's heads spin. She'd also fielded the calls from my mother, tactfully deflecting questions about my personal life while trying to schedule meetings around family obligations. "You realize this is going to change everything," she'd warned me while confirming details with Marcus's team. "They're never going to see you the same way again." That was exactly what I was hoping for. The memories of past family gatherings played in my mind like a highlight reel of humiliation. Emma's engagement party, where I'd been introduced as my daughter who plans parties for a living. Jake's wedding, where I'd been seated with Great Aunt Mildred and my teenage cousins because we didn't want you to feel left out at the singles table. My 30th birthday, when my mother had spent the entire dinner talking about how some people bloom later in life and sharing stories about women who'd gotten married in their 40s. Each memory had chipped away at my confidence, making me question whether my success was real or just elaborate busy work to avoid dealing with my real problems. But looking at my client testimonials, my bank statements, and the genuine friendships I'd built through my work, I knew the truth. My life wasn't incomplete, it was just different from what they'd imagined for me. The suit represented more than just an outfit. It represented my decision to stop apologizing for who I was. I'd spent years trying to make myself smaller to fit their expectations, accepting their diminishment as the price of family peace. But peace built on my silence about their treatment wasn't peace at all. It was surrender. I thought about Marcus's words from our phone call. "You don't need me to validate your worth." He was right. I didn't need him to prove I was valuable, but I needed him to help me remember that I was valuable, especially when I was surrounded by people who seemed determined to forget it. The navy suit hung in my closet like a promise to myself that I would never again accept being treated as less than I was, that I would never again smile politely while being insulted, and that I would never again let anyone make me feel ashamed of the life I built with my own hands. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October air that made everything feel possible. I'd slept better than I had in weeks, waking up with a strange sense of calm that replaced the usual pre-family gathering anxiety. Today felt different. Today, I wasn't going alone. The wedding program had arrived by email the night before, a beautifully designed piece that I had to admit showed good taste. My cousin Sarah had clearly hired a competent planner, though not one I recognized from the local industry. As I scrolled through the details, I found the seating chart attachment, and there it was, in elegant script. Table 12, children's table. Trace McCarthy, +1, and assorted cousins aged 6 to 14. The casual cruelty of it still took my breath away. Not even young adults table or family table, specifically the children's table, as if my unmarried status had somehow regressed me to childhood. I screenshot the seating chart and sent it to Rachel, who responded with a string of angry emojis and a text that said, "I can't wait to see their faces." Marcus texted around 9. "Landed, getting some coffee and then heading your way. How are you feeling?" "Ready," I replied, surprised to realize I meant it. The drive to the venue took me through the neighborhoods where I'd grown up, past the elementary school where I'd been the weird kid who preferred organizing the class library to playing kickball, past the high school where I'd been editor of the yearbook and president of the student council while Emma was homecoming. Queen and Jake was star quarterback. Different paths. Even then, Riverside Country Club hadn't changed much since Jake's wedding 5 years ago. The same manicured lawns, the same imposing columns, the same sense of old money and older traditions. I'd coordinated events here before it was a popular venue for the kind of clients who valued prestige over personality. The staff knew me, which would make today interesting. I parked in the guest lot and sat for a moment, looking at the building, where I'd spent so many uncomfortable hours at family functions. In a few hours, I'd be walking through those doors with Marcus Rivera and everything would change. The thought should have been terrifying, but instead, I felt a strange sense of justice settling over me. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Can't wait to see you today. Mom's so excited you're finally bringing someone. She's been telling everyone about your mystery date." The word finally rankled, as if my previous single status had been a problem requiring solving. But the reference to my mystery date made me smile. Mom had clearly been speculating about who I was bringing, probably hoping I'd found some nice accountant or lawyer to make me respectable in their eyes. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror one more time. The navy suit fit perfectly, my hair was styled in a sleek low bun, and my makeup was professional but polished. I looked like exactly what I was, a successful businesswoman who belonged at the main table, not relegated to supervising other people's children. As I walked toward the entrance, I caught sight of the seating chart displayed on an easel near the door. There it was in black and white, my name at the kids' table, surrounded by names like Timmy, age 8, and Madison, age 11. Several early arriving guests were studying the chart, and I watched one family friend point to my name and whisper something to her husband that made them both shake their heads sympathetically. The pity was almost worse than the insult. Poor Trace, still single at 32, reduced to supervising children at family weddings. In an hour, that narrative would change completely. The black sedan pulled up to the country club's circular drive at exactly 2:47 p.m., 13 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin. I watched from the lobby as Marcus stepped out, looking effortlessly elegant in a charcoal gray suit that probably costs more than some people's cars. He moved with the confident ease of someone accustomed to being watched, but when he saw me through the glass doors, his expression shifted to something warmer, more genuine. "You look incredible," he said as he approached, offering his arm in, a gesture that felt both gallant and natural. "Ready to do this?" "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. We walked into the lobby together, and I felt the exact moment when recognition dawned on the other guest. It started with a woman in a pink dress who was studying the seating chart. She looked up, did a double take, and grabbed her husband's arm so hard he nearly dropped his phone. The whispers began immediately, rippling through the crowd like waves. "Is that... It can't be... Marcus Rivera here with Trace?" I kept my expression neutral, but internally I was cataloging every shocked face, every dropped jaw, every frantic whisper. Mrs. Henderson from down the street was staring so hard I thought her eyes might pop out. The Johnsons, who'd always treated me with condescending kindness at neighborhood barbecues, were openly gaping. My mother appeared first, emerging from the bridal suite hallway in a flutter of champagne-colored silk and barely contained excitement. She'd clearly been watching for my arrival, probably planning to introduce herself to whatever ordinary man I'd finally managed to snag. When she saw Marcus, she literally stopped walking mid-stride. "Trace?" She called out, her voice pitched, higher than usual. "Sweetheart." "Hi, Mom," I said, walking over with Marcus beside me. "I'd like you to meet my friend, Marcus Rivera." "Marcus, this is my mother, Trace McCarthy." Marcus extended his hand with the same genuine warmth he'd shown me 3 years ago in that parking garage. "Mrs. McCarthy, it's such a pleasure to meet you. Trace has told me so much about her family." My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Behind her, I could see other family members gravitating toward us like planets pulled into orbit, Emma clutching her husband's arm, Jake abandoning his conversation with groomsmen, my father looking confused but intrigued. "Marcus Rivera," my mother repeated, as if saying his name might make him disappear. "The singer." "Among other things," Marcus replied with a smile that had charmed millions. "But today I'm just Trace's date, and I'm honored to be here for such a special occasion." The crowd of family members reached us, and I watched the rapid recalculation happening behind their eyes. Emma, who'd always been the pretty one, the successful one, the one who did everything right, was looking at me with something I'd never seen before: envy. "Trace, she said, her voice tight with forced brightness. You didn't tell us you knew Marcus Rivera. You didn't ask, I replied simply. Jake stepped forward, suddenly my best friend. Man, I love your music. That song, Midnight Train, played it at my wedding. Remember, Trace? I did remember. I remembered him barely acknowledging my presence at his wedding. Remembered being seated with the elderly relatives and teenage cousins. Remembered his new wife making jokes about my single status during the reception speeches. That's one of my favorites too, Marcus said graciously. Trace actually helped me work through some of the emotional elements of that song. She has incredible insight into human nature. It's part of what makes her so good at what she does. The compliment hung in the air like a challenge. Here was someone whose opinion mattered, someone with fame and success, publicly acknowledging my professional abilities. It was everything my family had never done, delivered by someone they couldn't dismiss or diminish. My father, ever the practical one, was the first to address the obvious question. So how do you two know each other? Marcus looked at me, letting me choose how much to reveal. Marcus was the headliner at a charity gala I coordinated 3 years ago, I said. We became friends. Friends, my mother repeated, her voice loaded with speculation and hope. I could practically see her mentally rewriting the narrative of my life, transforming me from the disappointing daughter to the one with secret connections to celebrity circles. The wedding coordinator appeared, clipboard in hand, looking frazzled. Excuse me, but we need to get everyone seated. The ceremony is starting in 5 minutes. She glanced at her list, then at Marcus, then back at her list with growing confusion. I'm sorry, but I don't see your name on the guest list, Mr. Rivera. Marcus supplied. I'm Trace's +1. The coordinator's eyes widened as recognition hit. Oh my goodness. She looked at her seating chart, then at me, then back at Marcus. I'm so sorry, but you're assigned to table 12, and I'm not sure table 12 will be fine, Marcus said smoothly, as if he attended children's birthday parties every weekend. I'm looking forward to meeting Trace's young relatives. The coordinator looked like she might faint. Around us, guests were pulling out phones, undoubtedly already posting to social media about the unexpected celebrity sighting. I could practically hear my cousin Sarah's blood pressure rising from wherever. She was getting ready. The wedding coordinator disappeared and returned within 3 minutes, clutching a hastily rewritten seating chart and looking like she'd just run a marathon. Behind her trailed Sarah's wedding planner, a woman I recognized from industry events, but had never worked with directly. Miss McCarthy, the planner said, her voice carefully professional despite the obvious panic in her eyes. We've made some adjustments to the seating arrangements. We'd like to move you and your guests to table 3. Table 3. I knew the hierarchy of wedding seating, and table 3 was reserved for the bride's closest family members. It was positioned directly adjacent to the head table with prime views of both the ceremony and reception festivities. The kids' table, by contrast, was tucked in the back corner near the kitchen doors. That's very kind, I said, but we're perfectly fine at table 12. I wouldn't want to inconvenience anyone. The planner's smile grew strained. Oh, it's no inconvenience at all. We just want to ensure our special guests are comfortable. Special guests. 20 minutes ago, I'd been relegated to child supervision. Now I was a special guest, and we all knew why. Marcus's presence had transformed me from family embarrassment to family asset in the span of a single introduction. Actually, Marcus interjected smoothly, I was looking forward to meeting the younger members of Trace's family. She's told me so much about them. He hadn't, of course. We'd barely discussed my family beyond the context of their treatment of me, but his words carried the weight of celebrity interest, and I watched the planner's face cycle through confusion, panic, and resignation. My mother appeared at my elbow, having clearly been briefed on the seating situation. Trace, sweetheart, wouldn't you and Marcus be more comfortable closer to the family? We're family wherever we sit, Mom, I replied, keeping my voice light but firm. Besides, someone needs to supervise the children during dinner, remember? You said I'd be perfect for that job. The color drained from her face, as she realized her own words were being used against her. Around us, other family members were having urgent whispered conversations, undoubtedly trying to figure out how to handle the situation without causing a scene. Emma approached with her husband in tow, her smile bright and brittle. "Trace, I had no idea you were dating Marcus Rivera." "How long has this been going on?" "We're not dating," I said clearly. "We're friends. Good friends." "Friends," she repeated, the same way our mother had, as if the word needed to be examined. "For hidden meanings, close friends?" Marcus stepped slightly closer to me, a subtle gesture of support that didn't go unnoticed. Close enough that when Trace told me about today, I wouldn't dream of letting her attend alone. The implication hung in the air that I needed support, that my family had created a situation where I'd required backup. Emma's smile faltered for just a moment before snapping back into place. "Well, we're just thrilled you're here," she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "I hope you'll both be comfortable at table 3. "Table 12, I corrected gently. "We're staying at table 12. Jake joined our growing circle, his earlier enthusiasm about meeting Marcus now tempered by obvious confusion about the seating. "Drama. Is there a problem with the table assignments?" "No problem at all," I said. "Marcus and I are exactly where we're supposed to be." The wedding planner looked like she was developing an ulcer. "Perhaps we could discuss this after the ceremony?" "The bride is ready to walk down the aisle." As if summoned by her words, Sarah appeared in the doorway of the bridal suite, resplendent in white silk and barely contained fury. Her eyes swept the lobby, taking in the cluster of family members, the confused wedding planner, and finally landing on Marcus and me. I watched her face transform as recognition hit. This was her wedding day, her moment to be the center of attention, and here I was with a Grammy-winning celebrity as my date. The same cousin who dismissed me as a responsible adult suitable for child supervision had inadvertently provided me with a platform to overshadow her special day. "Trace," she said, her voice carrying across the lobby with the kind of forced cheer that fooled no one. "What a surprise!" "Congratulations, Sarah," I replied, moving toward her with Marcus beside me. "You look beautiful." "This is my friend Marcus Rivera." Sarah's smile could have powered a small city. "Marcus Rivera. At my wedding. What an honor." "The honor is mine," Marcus said, taking her hand in a gesture that was both gracious and appropriately brief. "Trace speaks of you often." She did not, in fact, speak of Sarah often, but Marcus's diplomatic lie was delivered with such sincerity that Sarah practically glowed. I could see her mental calculations shifting how to maximize the social capital of having a celebrity at her wedding without admitting she'd originally seated him at the kids' table. "We should take our seats," I said, breaking the moment before it could become more awkward. "We don't want to delay your big moment." As we walked toward the ceremony space, I caught sight of the original seating chart still displayed on its easel. Someone had hastily taped a piece of paper over table 12, but the correction was obvious to anyone who looked closely. The message was clear. Trace McCarthy had been deemed suitable for children's supervision until she'd arrived with someone important enough to matter. Despite the seating chart drama, we ended up at table 12 after all. Marcus had been charmingly insistent, and I'd stood my ground with a politeness that masked steel. The kids' table turned out to be more entertaining than I'd expected. My 12-year-old cousin, Tommy, was fascinated by Marcus's stories about touring, and 8-year-old Madison kept asking him to sing, which he did in soft, impromptu snippets that delighted the children and drew envious glances from the adult tables. "This is way better than sitting with the grown-ups," Tommy announced during the salad course. "They're all boring and talk about mortgages." Marcus caught my eye and smiled. Smart kid. Sometimes the best conversations happen at the kids' table. Throughout dinner, I watched the adults at neighboring tables trying to eavesdrop on our conversation. My mother kept glancing over with a mixture of pride and confusion. As if she couldn't quite reconcile the daughter, she dismissed the woman sitting beside a celebrity who was genuinely enjoying her company. The business cards started arriving during the main course. First, it was Mrs. Pemberton from table 4, who slipped me her card with a whispered request about planning her daughter's graduation party. Then came Mr. Davidson, who who was organizing a corporate retreat and had heard about my reputation. By dessert, I had 6 new business cards and 3 tentative appointments scheduled. "This is fascinating," Marcus said, watching another potential client approach our table. "Do you always get this much business at family events?" "Never," I admitted. "Usually, family events are where I get asked why I'm not married yet. Their loss," he said simply. "These people are smart enough to recognize talent when they see it." The validation felt different coming from him than it would have from anyone else. Not because he was famous, but because he'd seen me work under pressure, had witnessed my professionalism firsthand, and understood the complexity of what I did. His respect was earned, not given out of politeness or obligation. During the toasts, I noticed my mother whispering urgently to my father, who kept glancing in our direction. When the speeches concluded and the dancing began, she made her way over to our table with the determined expression of a woman on a mission. "Trace, darling," she said, her voice pitched to carry to nearby tables. "I was just telling the Hendersons about your business. They had no idea you were so successful." The Hendersons, who lived 3 houses down from my parents and had known me since I was 5, smiled politely. "We always knew Trace was special," Mrs. Henderson said. "Though we had no idea she knew such interesting people." "Oh, Trace has always been full of surprises," my mother continued, her hand resting possessively on my shoulder. "She's planned events for senators, CEOs, all sorts of important people. I keep telling her she should write a book about her experiences." This was revisionist history at its finest. My mother had never expressed interest in my client roster before tonight, had never suggested I write a book, and had certainly never described me as full of surprises in any positive context. But now, with Marcus sitting beside me, my accomplishments were suddenly worth celebrating. "Actually," Marcus said, "Trace saved my career 3 years ago. I was having a panic attack before a charity performance, and she not only got me through it, but helped me deliver the best show of my life." The event raised over $500,000 for children's cancer research. The number landed like a small bomb in the conversation. $500,000. It was a concrete, undeniable measure of success that even my family couldn't diminish or dismiss. $500,000, my father repeated, his voice carrying a note of respect I'd never heard before. "That's quite an achievement." "It was all Trace," Marcus said firmly. "She saw what needed to be done and made it happen. That's what real leaders do." Emma appeared at our table, her smile slightly strained. "Mind if I steal Trace for a sister chat?" I glanced at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. "Go ahead. I'll keep the kids entertained." Emma led me to a quiet corner near the bar, away from the dancing and conversation. For a moment, we stood in awkward silence, watching the reception unfold around us. "So," she said finally, "Marcus Rivera." "So," I replied, offering nothing more. "Are you going to tell me how this happened? How you went from planning parties to being best friends with Grammy winners?" "I've always been planning parties." "Emma, the only difference is that now you care because someone you've heard of notices my work." She flinched at the directness of my response. "That's not fair. We've always supported your business. Have you?" I asked quietly, "When was the last time you asked me about a client, about a successful event, about anything related to my work that didn't involve questioning why I was still single?" Emma looked uncomfortable. "We worry about you, Trace. We want you to be happy." "I am happy. I've been happy. You just haven't been paying attention." The father-daughter dance was a masterclass in traditional expectations. I watched from our table as Sarah swayed with her father to "Isn't She Lovely?" her white dress spinning like a fairy tale come to life. Around the dance floor, other couples, joined in husbands and wives, boyfriends and girlfriends, all moving in perfect heteronormative harmony. "Beautiful tradition," Marcus said softly, but I caught the subtle irony in his voice. He'd grown up in a family where traditions were weapons, where conformity was demanded and differences were punished. We talked about it during one of our late-night conversations after his mother's birthday party. It is beautiful, I agreed, watching my father beam with pride as he danced with Emma, when it includes everyone. The song ended and the DJ invited all couples to join the bride and groom on the dance floor. Marcus stood and offered his hand with theatrical gallantry. Shall we give them something to really talk about? We moved on to the dance floor together and I felt the familiar weight of eyes following us. But this time, instead of the usual mixture of pity and curiosity, I sensed something different: respect, maybe even envy. Marcus was an accomplished dancer, leading with the kind of confidence that made even my amateur steps look graceful. You know, he said as we swayed to the music, I've been thinking about what you told me on the phone, about feeling incomplete. And I think your family has it backwards. They're the ones who are incomplete. They've built their entire identity around following a script: marriage, kids, white picket fence. But you've written your own script, and it's a hell of a lot more interesting. A middle-aged woman I didn't recognize approached us as the song ended. Excuse me, are you Marcus Rivera? I am, he said with practiced ease. I'm Jennifer Walsh, Sarah's college roommate. I just wanted to say how much I love your music, and also she turned to me with genuine curiosity. Are you really the event planner who organized the Children's Hospital Gala? My friend works in development there and she still talks about that night. That's me, I said, surprised by the recognition. That was incredible. The way you managed to make it both elegant and emotional, my friend said it was the most successful fundraiser in the hospital's history. Marcus squeezed my hand gently. Trace has a gift for creating experiences that matter. She doesn't just plan events. She creates moments that change people. Jennifer nodded enthusiastically. I can tell. That gala inspired me to get more involved. And charity work. I've been volunteering at the Children's Hospital ever since. After she walked away, Marcus leaned closer. See? You're not just planning parties, Trace. You're changing lives. That woman has been volunteering for 3 years because of something you created. The impact of his words hit me like a physical force. I'd always focused on the logistics, the flowers, the catering, the timing, but he was right. The ripple effects of my work extended far beyond the events themselves. I never thought about it that way. I admitted, that's because you're humble to a fault, but I've seen the thank you letters in your office. I've watched how your clients' faces light up when they talk about their events. You don't just create parties, you create joy, connection, hope. We danced through 2 more songs, and I found myself relaxing in a way I hadn't at a family event in years. Marcus's presence wasn't just protection from their judgment. It was a mirror showing me how someone who truly saw me valued what I brought to the world. During a slower song, he spoke quietly near my ear. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. When did you stop believing in your own worth? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? I mean, when did you start accepting their version of your story instead of telling your own? Because the woman I know, the one who built a business from nothing, who saves people's most important days, who showed me kindness when I needed it most, that woman doesn't need anyone's permission to be extraordinary. I felt tears prick my eyes. It's hard to remember your own worth when the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally keep pointing out what's missing. Then maybe it's time to surround yourself with people who see what's there instead of what's not. As the song ended, I noticed my cousin Jake approaching with his wife. They'd been married for 5 years, and I coordinated the rehearsal dinner, fact that had been glossed over in favor of focusing on how beautiful the bride looked and how lucky Jake was to have found such a perfect woman. Trace, Jake, said, his voice carrying a note of newfound respect. I wanted to apologize. I never really understood what you do for a living. I thought it was just, picking out flowers and stuff. It's a lot more than that, I said simply. I'm starting to figure that out. Marcus was telling me about the charity gala, and I looked it up online. $500,000 in one night? That's incredible, his wife nodded enthusiastically. We had no idea you were so successful. We feel terrible about, she gestured vaguely toward the kids' table, about assuming I belonged with children because I'm single. I finished for her. They both looked uncomfortable. We didn't mean it that way, Jake said. We just thought you thought what exactly? That being unmarried made me less of an adult? That my professional achievements didn't matter because I don't have a husband? The directness of my questions clearly made them uncomfortable, but I was past caring about their comfort. Marcus's hand found mine, a silent reminder that I wasn't alone in this moment. We're sorry, Jake's wife said finally. We really are. We never meant to make you feel unwelcome. But you did, I said quietly. For years, you've made me feel like I was failing at life because I chose a different path. And the sad thing is, I almost started believing you. The ladies' room at Riverside Country Club was decorated in the same understated elegance as the rest of the venue marble countertops. Soft lighting and fresh flowers that someone like me would have chosen for their subtle beauty. I'd stepped away from the reception to collect myself, the weight of the evening's revelations settling over me like a heavy blanket. I was touching at my lipstick when my mother entered, followed closely by Emma. They'd clearly been looking for me, and something in their expressions suggested this wasn't going to be a casual chat about the wedding. Trace, my mother said, her voice carrying the tone she'd used when I was a child and had disappointed her. We need to talk. About what? About this whole situation with Marcus Rivera. What exactly are you trying to prove? I set down my lipstick and turned to face them fully. I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm just existing as myself. Come on, Emma said, crossing her arms. You show up here with a celebrity, make a big scene about sitting at the kids' table, and now you're acting like we're the problem. Aren't you? I asked quietly. When was the last time either of you asked me about my life without immediately following it up with questions about why I'm still single? My mother's face flushed. We care about you, Trace. We want you to be happy. I am happy. I've been telling you that for years, but you refuse to believe me because my happiness doesn't look like yours. It's not normal, Emma said, her voice rising slightly. You're 32 years old, Trace. Most people your age are married with kids. They have real lives, real relationships. Real lives? I interrupted. What exactly is fake about my life, Emma? My business that employs 12 people? My clients who trust me with their most important moments. My friendships with people who value me for who I am, not who I'm dating. That's not what I meant, Emma backtracked, but the damage was done. That's exactly what she meant, I said, my voice steady despite the anger building in my chest. You've all decided that because I'm not married. I'm somehow less than you, less adult, less successful, less worthy of respect. My mother stepped closer, her voice dropping to the whisper she used when she was about to say something she knew was hurtful. We're just worried that you're missing out on what really matters. Career success is nice, but it's not everything. What happens when you're old and alone? What happens when you realize you've wasted your best years on work instead of building a family? The words hit like physical blows. Every fear I'd ever had about my choices, every moment of doubt in my quiet apartment, every time I'd wondered if they were right, it all came rushing back. But then I thought about Marcus's words on the dance floor, about Jennifer Walsh volunteering at the hospital because of an event I created, about the client testimonials in my office filled with gratitude for moments I'd helped create. Wasted my best years? I repeated, my voice growing stronger. I've spent my best years building something meaningful. I've created joy for hundreds of people. I've raised money for causes that matter. I've built a business that supports other people's livelihoods. How is any of that a waste? Because you're alone, Emma said bluntly. All of that success, and you're still alone. I'm not alone, I said firmly. I have friends who see my value. I have clients who trust me. I have a life full of meaningful work and genuine relationships. Just because I don't have a husband doesn't mean I'm alone. Friends like Marcus Rivera? My mother asked, her voice heavy with skepticism. Trace, be realistic. He's a celebrity. He's not going to what? I interrupted. Be a real friend, care about me as a person, respect my intelligence and character. He's going to get bored and move on, Emma said. And then what? You'll be right back where you started, except now you'll have embarrassed yourself. In front of everyone. Their words revealed everything I'd suspected but never wanted to acknowledge. They didn't just pity me, they actively rooted for my failure. They needed me to fail so their choices would feel more valid. You know what? I said, pulling out my phone and opening the voice recorder app. I want to remember this conversation exactly as it happened. Trace, what are you doing? My mother asked, eyeing the phone nervously. I'm recording this so I can remember how my own family talked about me behind my back. How you called my friendships fake, my success meaningless, and my life a waste. That's not what we said, Emma protested. That's exactly what you said. And you know what the saddest part is? You're so invested in me being miserable that you can't even celebrate when good things happen to me. Tonight, I brought someone who genuinely cares about me to a family event, and instead of being happy for me, you're trying to tear it down. We're trying to protect you, my mother said. From what? From being happy. From having friends who value me. From believing in my own worth. I stopped the recording and slipped my phone back into my purse. I'm done pretending this is about love or concern. This is about your need to feel superior to someone, and I've been your target for too long. Emma's face was red with anger. You think you're so much better than us now that you have your celebrity friend. I don't think I'm better than you, I said sadly. I just finally understand that I'm not worse than you either, and that's something I should have realized years ago. I moved toward the door, but my mother's voice stopped me. If you walk out of here, if you keep this attitude up, you're going to lose your family, Trace. I turned back to look at them, my mother with her worried frown, Emma with her defensive anger, and felt something settle in my chest. Not sadness exactly, but a kind of peaceful resolution. I lost my family years ago, I said quietly. I just didn't realize it until now. Walking back to the reception, I felt like I was moving through water. The confrontation in the bathroom had ripped open wounds I'd spent years trying to heal, and suddenly I was 8 years old again, standing in my childhood bedroom with my third-grade report card in my hand. Trace is a bright student with excellent organizational skills, Mrs. Peterson had written. She shows natural leadership abilities and genuine concern for her classmates. However, she tends to be somewhat solitary and would benefit from more social interaction. I've been so proud of that report card straight A's. Glowing comments about my character, recognition of talents I was just beginning to understand. But when I'd shown it to my parents, my mother had focused on that single word, solitary. See? She'd said to my father as if I wasn't standing right there. Even her teacher thinks she's too isolated. We need to encourage her to be more social, more normal. Normal. That word haunted my childhood like a ghost. Emma was normal, pretty, popular, interested in the same things as other girls her age. Jake was normal, athletic, outgoing. The kind of boy other parents wished their sons could be. But I was different, and different was dangerous. I remembered the forced playdates with neighborhood children who didn't understand my fascination with organizing. Elaborate games with complex rules. I remembered being enrolled in activities I hated: soccer, cheerleading, youth group hall in the name of helping me fit in. I remembered the constant suggestions that I smile more, talk more, be more like other kids. Trace has always been our independent one, my mother would say to other parents, and I learned to recognize the subtext. Independent meant difficult, stubborn, unwilling to conform. It was never presented as a strength. The pattern had continued through high school. When I'd been elected student council president, my mother's first comment was, I hope this doesn't interfere with your social life. When I'd won a scholarship for my college essay about event planning, she worried that I was too focused on work for someone so young. Even my business success had been filtered through their lens of concern. When I'd bought my first office space, my father had asked if I was sure I could handle the responsibility. When I'd hired my first employee, my mother had wondered if I was getting in over my head. When I'd been featured in a business magazine, Emma had joked that I was famous for being single. Every achievement had been diminished, every success, qualified with worry about what I was missing. They trained me to see my own accomplishments through their eyes impressive, maybe, but ultimately hollow because they didn't lead to marriage and children. I thought about Marcus's question on the dance floor. When did you stop believing in your own worth? Now I knew the answer. It had been gradual, like erosion. 1,000 small moments where my dreams were dismissed, my choices questioned, my happiness deemed insufficient. The cruelest part was that I'd internalized their voice. How many times had I lain awake in my beautiful apartment, wondering if they were right? How many times had I looked at my thriving business and felt empty because I was experiencing it alone? How many times had I diminished my own joy because it didn't match their template for happiness? I'd spent so many years trying to prove them wrong that I'd forgotten the most important truth. I didn't need to prove anything. My life was valuable because it was mine, because I built it with intention and care, because it reflected my authentic self rather than someone else's expectations. The bathroom confrontation had been painful, but it had also been clarifying. Their words had stripped away the pretense of loving concern and revealed what I'd always suspected. They needed me to fail so they could feel successful. They needed me to be miserable so they could feel superior. "There you are," Marcus said, appearing at my elbow with a concerned expression. I was starting to worry. "Family meeting," I said, and something in my tone made him study my face more carefully. "Rough one?" "Clarifying one." He nodded, understanding without needing details. "Ready to go home?" I looked around the reception, at my parents deep in conversation with other relatives, at Emma laughing with her husband, at Jake telling animated stories to a group of cousins. They looked happy, settled, content with their choices and their certainties. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free from the weight of their expectations. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need their validation or their understanding. I certainly didn't need their pity. "Almost," I said. "There's one more thing I need to do." The DJ had just announced the last dance, and couples were gathering on the floor for the final song of the evening. I watched my parents dance together, my father's hand on my mother's waist, both of them smiling at each other with the easy affection of 3 decades together. It was beautiful, and I was genuinely happy for them. But it was their happiness, not mine. And for the first time in my life, that felt like enough. "What's the one more thing?" Marcus asked. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. "I want to dance with my friend at my cousin's wedding. Is that okay with you?" "It would be my honor," he said, offering his arm with the same gallant gesture he'd used when we'd arrived. As we moved onto the dance floor for the last time that evening, I felt the weight of 32 years of other people's expectations lifting from my shoulders. I was Trace McCarthy, successful businesswoman, loyal friend, and creator of joy for others. I was complete exactly as I was, and that was more than enough. The final dance had ended, and guests were beginning to gather their things when Sarah's maid of honor tapped her champagne glass with a spoon. The room quieted as people turned their attention to the head table, where the bridal party was preparing for one last round of toasts. "Before we end this magical evening," the maid of honor announced, "Sarah has something special she'd like to share." My cousin stood, radiant in her wedding dress, champagne glass in hand. She'd been stealing glances at Marcus and me throughout the reception, and I could see the calculations behind her smile how to acknowledge our presence without admitting the kids' table had been a mistake. "I just wanted to thank everyone for being here tonight," Sarah began, her voice carrying across the room. "Having all of our family and friends together to celebrate our love means everything to David and me." She paused, her eyes scanning the room before landing on our table. "I have to admit, we had some unexpected surprises tonight. My cousin Trace brought a very special guest with her." Murmur of appreciation ran through the crowd as several people turned to look at Marcus, who smiled graciously. And it made me realize how little we sometimes know about the people closest to us. Trace has always been the responsible one in our family, the one we could count on to take care of things. She's so dedicated to taking care of others that sometimes I think she forgets to take care of herself. The words sounded complimentary on the surface, but I could hear the subtle condescension underneath. Responsible, dedicated to taking care of others. The same language they've used to justify seating me with the children. So I'm grateful that she finally has someone special in her life, Sarah continued, raising her glass toward Marcus. Someone who appreciates what a caring, nurturing person she is. The toast was a masterclass in passive aggression. She'd managed to acknowledge Marcus while simultaneously reducing me to a caretaker, someone whose primary value was in serving others. She'd transformed my professional success into maternal instinct and my independence into loneliness that had finally been rescued. The room erupted in applause, and I felt Marcus tense beside me. He understood the subtext as clearly as I did. "Would you like to respond?" he asked quietly. I looked around the room at the faces of people who'd known me my entire life, people who'd watched me grow from that solitary little girl into a successful businesswoman, people who'd reduced my complexity to a single narrative about being single and sad. "Actually," I said, standing up, "I would." The applause died down as people realized I was going to speak. Sarah's smile froze on her face. This wasn't part of the plan. "Thank you, Sarah," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the room. "That was very kind. I'd like to add something, if I may." I looked around the room, meeting the eyes of family members, family friends, and neighbors who'd known me since childhood. Some looked curious, others nervous, as if they sensed something was about to shift. Sarah's right about one thing. I am someone who takes care of others. It's not just what I do for family, it's what I do professionally. I've spent the last decade building a business that creates joy for people during their most important moments. I've planned weddings, anniversaries, corporate celebrations, and charity galas. I've helped families celebrate milestones and helped organizations raise money for causes that matter. I paused, letting that sink in. 3 years ago, I coordinated a charity gala that raised over $500,000 for children's cancer research. Last year, my business generated over $2 million in revenue and employed 12 people. This year, I'm expanding into destination weddings and considering opening a second location. The room is completely silent now. These weren't the kind of details my family usually shared about my life. "But here's what I want you to understand," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "I didn't build this business because I was missing something in my life. I built it because I found something in my life, a passion for creating meaningful experiences, a talent for bringing people together, and a drive to build something that matters." I looked directly at my parents, then at Emma, then at Jake. For years, I've been told that my success doesn't count because I'm not married, that my happiness isn't real because I don't have children, that my life is incomplete because it doesn't match someone else's template. Marcus stood beside me, a silent show of support that didn't go unnoticed. But tonight, I realized something important. My life isn't incomplete, it's just different. And different isn't wrong, it's just different. I raised my champagne glass. So here's to Sarah and David, who found love and decided to build a life together. Here's to all the couples in this room who chose partnership and family. And here's to everyone who's building a life that reflects their authentic self, whether that includes marriage or not. The toast hung in the air for a moment, and then Marcus began to clap. Slowly, others joined in, first the people at nearby tables who'd been collecting my business cards all evening. Then some of the younger guests. Then finally the older relatives, who seemed unsure but didn't want to be rude. As I sat back down, I felt a strange sense of peace. I'd finally said what needed to be said, not in anger or defensiveness, but in simple, honest truth. "That," Marcus said quietly, "was beautiful." "That," I replied, "was long overdue." Sarah managed to recover her composure enough to thank everyone for coming and wish them safe travels home. But as guests began to leave, I noticed something different in how they approached me. Instead of the usual mixture of pity and concern, I saw something that looked like respect. Mrs. Henderson, who'd known me since I was 5, stopped by our table on her way out. "Trace, dear," she said, "I had no idea about your business success. Your parents should be so proud." "They are," I said diplomatically, though we both knew it was more complicated than that. "Well, I'm proud of you," she said firmly. "You've built something remarkable." As she walked away, I felt Marcus's hand squeeze mine under the table. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Like I finally remembered who I am. I replied. And for the first time in years, that felt like exactly enough. As the reception wound down, I found myself in conversations I'd never had at family events before. Real conversations about business, about goals, about the satisfaction of building something meaningful. The shift in how people saw me was palpable. I was no longer the paid single cousin, but a successful entrepreneur who happened to be unmarried. Trace called out David's father, a man I'd met briefly during the cocktail hour. I wanted to catch you before you left. I'm on the board of the Children's Museum, and we're planning a major fundraising gala next spring. Would you be interested in discussing the project? I pulled out my business card, a simple gesture that felt revolutionary in the context of a family wedding. I'd love to hear more about it. Have your development team call my office next week. The Children's Museum Gala could be huge, Marcus said as we watched David's father walk away. Museums that size usually have serious budgets for their major events. It's a good opportunity, I agreed, but I was thinking about more than just the business potential. 6 months ago, I would have been thrilled by the prospect of a high-profile client. Tonight, it felt like confirmation of something I'd always known but had been afraid to fully embrace. I was good at what I did, good enough that people sought me out, good enough that my reputation preceded me. The evening had brought 3 more potential clients, 2 referrals to other event planners in my network, and 1 conversation about a potential partnership with a luxury hotel chain. The business cards in my purse felt like seeds of possibility, each one representing a future project that could grow into something meaningful. I have an idea, Marcus said as we watched the last of the guests filtering out. What if we worked together on something bigger than just events? What do you mean? I mean, what if we combined your event planning expertise with my platform and connections? I've been wanting to do more charity work, but I need someone who understands how to create experiences that actually move people to action. The idea sent a thrill through me. You're talking about a series of benefit concerts? I'm talking about something bigger. A whole foundation, maybe. Events that combine entertainment with education, that create lasting impact instead of just one-night fundraisers. I could see immediately intimate venues, carefully curated experiences, strategic partnerships with organizations that needed both funding and awareness. The kind of work that would challenge me professionally while contributing to causes I cared about. That's incredible, I said, my mind already racing with possibilities. We could target specific issues, create educational components, build long-term relationships with beneficiaries instead of just writing checks. Exactly. And you'd be the creative director, the one who makes sure every detail serves the larger purpose. The offer was more than professional opportunity. It was recognition of my skills, my vision, my ability to create experiences that mattered. It was everything I'd been working toward without realizing it. There's something else, Marcus said, his expression growing more serious. After tonight, after watching how your family treated you and how you handled it, I need you to know something. You're not just talented at what you do, you're one of the most genuinely good people I know. The way you see the best in people, the way you create joy for others, the way you stood up for yourself tonight without being cruel to them, that's rare. I felt tears prick my eyes. They're not bad people, Marcus. They're people who've been so focused on their own definition of success that they can't see yours, he said gently. And that's their loss, not yours. Looking around the nearly empty reception hall, I thought about the evening's progression. I'd arrived feeling defensive, braced for another round of subtle humiliation. I was leaving with new business opportunities, a potential partnership with someone I respected, and most importantly, a clear sense of my own worth. I keep thinking about what you said earlier, I told him, about surrounding myself with people who see what's there instead of what's not. And I think I'm finally ready to do that. Really do it, not just in theory, but in practice. Marcus nodded understanding. That might mean some difficult conversations with your family. It might mean some difficult boundaries with my family. I corrected. I can't control how they see me, but I can control how much access they have to my emotional well-being. As we prepared to leave, I took one last look around the reception hall. Tomorrow, this would all be a memory. The flowers would be distributed to guests. The decorations would be packed away. The dance floor would be empty. But the conversations I'd had tonight, the connections I'd made, the person I'd discovered I could be when I stopped apologizing for my success, that would last. Ready? Marcus asked, offering his arm. More than ready, I said, and meant it. We walked out together into the cool October night, leaving behind a room full of people who finally understood that Trace McCarthy was exactly who she'd always said she was: successful, fulfilled, and complete exactly as she was. The business proposal draft I'd started sketching on a cocktail napkin during dessert was tucked safely in my purse, along with the business cards from potential clients and the growing sense that everything was about to change. Not because I'd found someone to complete me, but because I'd finally remembered that I'd been complete all along. The country club was nearly empty now, just a few stragglers saying their goodbyes and the catering staff beginning the cleanup process. Marcus and I had been among the last to leave the reception hall, lingering in conversations with people who suddenly saw me as someone worth knowing rather than someone to be pitied dot in the lobby. I found myself face to face with my parents one final time. They stood near the coat check, looking uncertain and smaller somehow than they had at the beginning of the evening. The confident disappointment they'd worn like armor for so many years seemed to have cracked. "Trace," my father said, his voice carrying a note I never heard before, something that might have been respect, or perhaps just confusion. "That was quite a speech you gave." "It was honest," I replied simply. My mother stepped forward, her hands twisted together in front of her. "We never meant to make you feel." She stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. "We love you, sweetheart. We've always loved you." "I know you do," I said, and I meant it. "But love isn't the same as understanding, and it's certainly not the same as acceptance. We accept you," she said quickly. "Do you?" I asked gently. "Because accepting me means accepting that my life is valuable as it is, not despite how it is. It means celebrating my success without immediately following it with questions about why I'm still single. It means treating me like a complete person instead of a work in progress." My father cleared his throat. "Your mother and I have been talking, and we realize we may have been overly concerned about your future." "Overly concerned," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling it?" "We want you to be happy," my mother said, her voice small. "We've always wanted you to be happy." "I'm happy," I said, the words carrying a weight they never had before. I've been trying to tell you that for years, but you refuse to believe me because my happiness doesn't look like yours." Marcus had been standing slightly behind me, close enough to offer support, but far enough away to let me handle this myself. Now he stepped forward, extending his hand to my father. "Mr. McCarthy, it's been a pleasure meeting you. Your daughter is an extraordinary woman, talented, successful, and one of the most genuinely kind people I've ever met." My father shook his hand, his expression caught between pride and bewilderment. "Thank you. We're proud of her too." "You should be," Marcus said firmly. "She's built something remarkable." There was a moment of awkward silence, filled with years of unspoken expectations and disappointments. Then my mother surprised me by stepping forward and pulling me into a hug. "I'm sorry," she whispered against my ear. "I'm sorry we made you feel like you weren't enough." The apology was imperfect, qualified, but it was also genuine. I hugged her back, feeling the familiar mix of love and frustration that had defined our relationship for so many years. "I love you too, Mom," I said as we separated. "But things are going to be different from now on." "Different how?" she asked, though I could see in her eyes that she already knew. "Different in that I'm not going to apologize for my life anymore. I'm not going to accept being treated as less than I am. And I'm not going to pretend that your disappointment in my choices is actually concern for my welfare." Emma appeared from the ladies' room, her makeup refreshed but her expression still guarded. She'd heard the tail end of our conversation, and something in her posture suggested she wanted to say something but wasn't sure how. "Trace," she began hesitantly, "about earlier." "Earlier was clarifying," I said, cutting her off gently. "We all said things that needed to be said." I didn't mean I don't think your life is fake or meaningless. She struggled with the words. I guess I never really understood what you do, and maybe I was a little jealous. Jealous? I asked, genuinely surprised. You built something from nothing. You're independent, successful, you don't need anyone to take care of you. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to do that instead of just following the expected path. It was the most honest thing Emma had ever said to me, and it revealed something I'd never considered, that while I'd been envying her certainty, she'd been envying my independence. It's not too late, I said. You could still build something of your own if you wanted to. She shook her head. I have the kids, responsibilities. It's different when you have a family. Different, but not impossible, I said. And Emma, having a family doesn't make you better than me, and being independent doesn't make me better than you. We just chose different paths. Jake joined our circle, having apparently been waiting for the right moment to approach. His expression was sheepish, like a little boy who'd been caught doing something wrong. I owe you an apology too, he said. I never really took your business seriously. I thought it was just, party planning. It is party planning, I said with a smile. Really excellent, really complex party planning that requires business acumen, creative vision, and the ability to manage dozens of moving parts simultaneously. I'm starting to figure that out, he admitted. Marcus told me about some of the events you've done. $500,000 for charity. That's incredible. It's my job, I said simply. It's what I'm good at. Marcus checked his watch discreetly. I hate to interrupt, but our car should be here soon. It was a graceful exit line, giving me the opportunity to end this conversation on a positive note rather than letting it devolve into more complicated territory. This has been enlightening, I said, looking at each of my family members in turn. I hope you all have a good night. Trace, my mother called as we turned to leave. Will we see you at Christmas? I paused, considering the question and all its implications. Christmas at my parents' house with its predictable rhythms and even more predictable conversations. The same questions about my personal life, the same subtle comparisons to my siblings. Choices, the same sense of being tolerated rather than celebrated. I'll think about it, I said finally. But if I come, it will be as myself successful, happy, and complete exactly as I am. If that's not acceptable, then maybe it's better if I don't come at all. The words hung in the air like a challenge. My mother's face cycled through several emotions before settling on something that looked like understanding. We'll work on it, she said quietly. Good, I replied. Because I'm done working on myself to fit your expectations. I like who I am. And as Marcus and I walked out into the crisp October night, I realized that for the first time in my adult life, that statement was completely true. The black sedan that picked us up was quiet and comfortable, a stark contrast to the emotional intensity of the evening. As we pulled away from Riverside Country Club, I watched the building grow smaller in the rearview window, feeling like I was leaving behind more than just a wedding reception. So, Marcus said once we were settled in the back seat, how are you feeling? Exhausted, I admitted, but also lighter? Like, I've been carrying around this weight for so long that I forgot it was there until it was finally gone. He nodded, understanding. Family dynamics are complicated. They can make you feel like you're still the person you were at 15, even when you've grown into someone completely different. Is that what happened to you? I asked. I knew some of his history, the parents who'd pushed him into music as a child, the early fame that had cost him a normal adolescence, the family relationships that had never quite recovered from the pressure of his success. In some ways, he said, my parents loved me, but they loved the idea of my success more. When I started having panic attacks and wanted to take a break from touring, they couldn't understand why I wasn't grateful for opportunities other people would kill for. That must have been lonely. It was. But it taught me something important. The people who really love you want you to be happy, not successful by their definition. They want you to flourish as yourself, not as their vision of who you should be. The city lights blurred past the window as we made our way back toward downtown. I thought about the conversation with my family, about the mixture of hurt and hope. In my mother's voice, about Emma's unexpected admission of jealousy. Do you think they'll actually change? I asked. I think they'll try, Marcus said thoughtfully. The question is whether you'll be patient enough to let them, and whether you'll be strong enough to maintain your boundaries if they don't. It was a fair question. For so many years, I bent myself into shapes that made them comfortable, accepting their diminishment as the price of family peace. But tonight had shown me that their peace had been built on my silence, and that wasn't sustainable anymore. I've been thinking about what you said earlier, I told him. About surrounding myself with people who see what's there instead of what's not. And I realize I've been doing that professionally for years. My clients, my employees, my business relationships, they're all based on mutual respect and recognition of value. It's only with my family that I've accepted being seen as less than I am, Marcus smiled. That's the difference between chosen family and biological family. One is earned, the other is inherited. Chosen family, I repeated. I like that. The people who choose to be in your life because of who you are, not because they're obligated to be there. Those are the relationships that nourish you. I thought about Rachel, my assistant who'd supported me through every family crisis. About my network of vendors and suppliers who respected my judgment and valued our partnership. About Marcus himself, who'd flown across the country to stand beside me at a family wedding because he understood what it meant to need support in the face of people who couldn't see your worth. Speaking of chosen family, I said, I want you to know how much tonight meant to me. Not just showing up, but everything defending my work, supporting my decisions, helping me remember who I am when they tried to make me feel small. That's what friends do, he said simply. Real friends, anyway. We'd reached my neighborhood, the familiar streets of downtown where I'd built my life on my own terms. The lights were on in my building, and I could see the outline of my office. On the third floor where I'd left some paperwork from Monday morning. Can I ask you something? Marcus said as we pulled up to my building. Of course. What happens now? After tonight, after everything that was said and realized, what's next for Trace McCarthy? I considered the question as the driver came around. To open my door, what was next? The foundation idea we discussed was exciting, full of potential for meaningful work. The new clients from tonight represented growth opportunities for my existing business. But beyond the professional possibilities, there was something else, a sense of personal freedom I never experienced before. I think what's next is that I stop asking permission to be happy, I said. I stopped justifying my choices to people who've already decided they don't approve. I stopped making myself smaller to make other people more comfortable. That sounds like a good plan. And I start saying yes to opportunities that excite me, even if they're scary or unconventional. I looked at him meaningfully, like foundation partnerships with Grammy-winning musicians. He grinned. I was hoping you'd say that. My team is going to want to set up some meetings next week to discuss the details. My team is ready, I said, thinking of Rachel's excitement when I told her about the conversation. We've never turned down a challenge yet. As I gathered my purse and prepared to get out of the car, Marcus caught my hand. Trace, he said seriously, I want you to remember something. What happened tonight, the way you stood up for yourself, the way you refused to accept their diminishment, that wasn't just about having backup. That was you being brave enough to claim your own worth. I know, I said, and for the first time, I really did know. Thank you for reminding me, though. Anytime, that's what chosen family is for. I stepped out into the cool night air, feeling the weight of the day settling around me like a comfortable blanket. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and undoubtedly some difficult conversations as my family processed what had happened tonight. But for now, I was content to walk into my beautiful apartment, pour myself a glass of wine, and celebrate the fact that Trace McCarthy, successful businesswoman, loyal friend, and complete person exactly as she was, had finally come home to herself. 3 months later, I stood in the conference room of my newly expanded office space, looking at business cards that read, Trace McCarthy, CEO, McCarthy Events, and the Rivera Foundation. The title still felt surreal, even though the work had become The most fulfilling of my career. The foundation had launched 6 weeks ago, with a benefit concert for literacy programs that raised over $200,000 in a single evening. Marcus had performed, but the real star had been the program designed interactive stations where attendees could tutor children, a silent auction featuring experiences rather than objects, and educational components that helped people understand the long-term impact of literacy on communities. "The Times wants to interview you about the foundation model," Rachel said, sticking her head into the conference room. "Something about how entertainment and education can work together for social impact." "Schedule it for next week," I said, still somewhat amazed that major publications wanted to hear my thoughts on anything. "And remind me to call the Children's Museum. Their gala is next month, and we need to finalize the catering details." The museum gala had turned into exactly the kind of project I dreamed of, a sophisticated event that would raise serious money while creating genuine engagement with the museum's mission. 3 other cultural institutions had already reached out about similar collaborations. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, flying back from Nashville tomorrow. Dinner to discuss the spring concert series. The spring series was our most ambitious project yet, 5 concerts in 5 cities. Each one partnered with local organizations addressing different social issues. It was the kind of work that challenged every skill I developed over the past decade while contributing to causes I genuinely cared about. Was responding to his text when my office phone rang. Rachel's voice came through the intercom. "Your mother's on line 1. I paused, my finger hovering over the button. 3 months ago, that call would have filled me with dread, anticipation of disappointment, and subtle criticism. Now it just felt like a phone call from my mother. "Hi, Mom," I said, settling into my desk chair. "Trace, sweetheart, I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." "Just work stuff," I said. "What's going on?" "Well, I wanted to tell you that your father and I saw the article about you in the Business Journal. The one about the foundation and how you're revolutionizing charity events." I remembered the article, a thoughtful piece about innovative approaches to fundraising that had quoted me extensively and featured a photo of me and Marcus at the literacy benefit. "What did you think?" I asked, genuinely curious about her response. "I think we're very proud of you," she said, her voice carrying a warmth I wasn't used to hearing when she talked about my work. "I've been telling everyone about it. Mrs. Henderson said she's not surprised. She always knew you were going to do something special." It was a small thing, but significant. My mother was claiming credit for my success in the way proud parents do, rather than qualifying it with concerns about my personal life. "I also wanted to ask," she continued, "about Christmas. I know you said you'd think about it, and I wanted you to know that we've been thinking too." "About what?" "About how we've treated you, about what we said at the wedding." Her voice grew softer. "Emma showed us some articles about your business, and Jake found videos of Marcus talking about the foundation in interviews. We didn't really understand what you'd built, and now you do? Now we're starting to. And we're starting to understand that when you said you were happy, you meant it. We just couldn't see past our own expectations to believe you." I felt something tight in my chest beginning to loosen. It's hard to see people differently than you've always seen them. It is, but we want to try. We want Christmas to be different this year, about celebrating the family we actually are instead of the family we thought we should be. "What does that look like?" I asked. "It looks like asking about your foundation work instead of your dating life. It looks like Emma bringing her business plan for the catering company she wants to start. Did you know she's been developing recipes and researching commercial kitchen rentals?" I didn't know that, and I felt a pang of regret that my sister and I had drifted so far apart that she hadn't felt comfortable sharing her dreams with me. "It looks like Jake talking about the community center program he's been volunteering with instead of just his job," my mother continued. "It looks like all of us being proud of what we've actually accomplished instead of what we think we should have accomplished." "That sounds nice," I said, meaning it. "Really nice." "So you'll come?" I looked around my office at the testimonial, letters pinned to my bulletin board, at the photos from foundation events, at the business cards from potential clients stacked on my desk. This was the life I'd built, the success I'd earned, the happiness I created for myself, Yes, I said. I'll come. But I'm bringing Marcus. He doesn't have family plans. And I'm not spending Christmas alone just because I'm not married. Of course, my mother said quickly. We'd love to have him. Your father's been practicing guitar just in case Marcus wants to play something together. The image of my practical, reserved father practicing guitar to impress my friend made me smile. I'll let him know. After we hung up, I sat in my office for a few minutes, processing the conversation. Change was possible, even in relationships that have felt stuck for decades. It required courage from everyone involved, courage to admit mistakes, courage to see people differently, courage to build something new from the foundation of something old. Rachel knocked on my doorframe. The foundation board meeting is in an hour, and the caterer wants to confirm the menu for the museum gala. Also, your 3 o'clock appointment is here, the couple planning their anniversary party. Send them in, I said, straightening the new business cards on my desk. And Rachel, thank you. For everything. For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. For supporting the foundation idea. For being part of my chosen family. She smiled. Thank you for choosing me. As she left to get my clients, I looked out the window at the city where I'd built my life on my own terms. 3 months ago, I'd been the paid single cousin relegated to the kids' table. Today, I was the CEO of a growing business and co-founder of a foundation that was already making a measurable difference in people's lives. The transformation hadn't happened because Marcus Rivera had walked into a wedding with me. It had happened because I'd finally found the courage to stop apologizing for who I was and start celebrating it instead. My phone buzzed with another text from Marcus. Peace, saw the Times wants to interview you. Told you that foundation idea was brilliant. I typed back, we were brilliant. See you tomorrow. We, I realized, was the most important word in that sentence. Not because I needed someone else to complete me, but because I'd learned the difference between meeting people and choosing them. I'd spent so many years feeling incomplete because my family couldn't see my worth. Now I was surrounded by people who not only saw it, but helped me build on it. The couple for my 3 o'clock appointment appeared in my doorway, a woman in her 60s and a man about the same age, both glowing with the kind of happiness that comes from decades of genuine partnership. Ms. McCarthy, the woman said, we're the Hendersons. We're planning our 40th anniversary party, and everyone says you're the person to call when you want something truly special. I stood to greet them, business card in hand, ready to create another memorable experience for people celebrating love in all its forms. I'm Trace McCarthy, I said, and creating something special is exactly what I do. Outside my office window, the city hummed with the energy of millions of people building lives that mattered to them. I was one of them now, not the woman who'd spent years trying to fit into someone else's definition of success, but the one who'd written her own definition and built a life worthy of it, complete, successful, and exactly where I belonged.